The valley outside was no longer screaming. The storm had finally loosened its grip, leaving behind a world carved clean and unfamiliar. Snow stretching endlessly, broken only by the dark bones of distant mountains. The cave felt different now too. Not safer exactly, but quieter in a way that felt earned. The fire had been rebuilt, steadier than before, its glow reflecting softly on stone walls that had witnessed both death and survival in a single night. May sat close to her sister, who was now fully conscious, though still weak. Lynn's eyes moved slowly around the cave, taking in every detail as if trying to confirm that she was truly still alive. The Apache warrior stood near the entrance again, but this time not as a barrier between them and danger, more like someone checking whether danger still existed at all. It didn't, for now. The silence between them had changed since the battle. It was no longer filled with uncertainty or fear. Instead, something heavier had replaced it, understanding without words. May finally spoke, her voice softer than before. "You didn't have to save us," she said. The warrior didn't turn immediately. When he did, his expression remained unchanged, calm, controlled. "Yes," he said simply, "I did." Lynn shifted slightly beside her sister, watching him carefully. May hesitated, then looked down at her hands. "We don't even know where we are," she admitted, "or how to leave." A pause. The warrior stepped away from the entrance and moved closer to the fire, not because he needed warmth, but because the distance between them no longer mattered in the same way. "This mountain doesn't belong to maps people trust," he said. May frowned slightly. "So, we're trapped?" He shook his head once. "No one is trapped," he corrected. "Only delayed." That answer lingered in the air longer than expected. Lynn exchanged a glance with May, as if trying to decode what kind of man spoke like that. Not comforting. Not cold. Just absolute. May looked at him more directly now. The fear that had defined her since the blizzard was still there, but beneath it, something new had begun to form. Curiosity, respect, and something more fragile, she didn't yet have a name for. After a long pause, she asked quietly, "Why did you stay with us after saving us?" The question wasn't about survival anymore. It was about choice. The warrior looked toward the fire for a moment, as if reading something inside it. "Because leaving would have been easier," he said, "and still wrong." Silence followed. Outside, wind moved gently across the snowfields, no longer violent, just passing through. Lynn finally spoke for the first time in a while, her voice faint but clear. "You could have died," she said. The warrior nodded slightly. "I know." That simple acknowledgement settled deeper than fear or gratitude ever could. May's gaze lingered on him longer now. The distance between them still existed. Language, culture, world, everything. But it felt thinner than before, like ice beginning to crack, not breaking yet, but no longer solid. After a moment, she spoke again. Quieter this time. "If you hadn't found us—" She didn't finish. The fire answered for her in its steady crackle. The warrior stepped closer, adjusting the log so the flame grew stronger. "You did not die," he said. "That is enough." May exhaled slowly, as if releasing something she had been holding since the storm began. Lynn leaned her head against her sister's shoulder, finally allowing her body to rest completely. For the first time, there was no immediate danger demanding action, no storm forcing decisions, no hunters waiting in the dark, just survival, and the strange stillness that follows it. May looked at the warrior again, watching him as he stood between fire and snow, as if belonging to neither world completely. Then, softly, almost unintentionally, she asked, "Will you stay, even when the storm is gone?" It wasn't about rescue anymore. It wasn't even about survival. It was something quieter, something human. The warrior didn't answer right away. He looked out at the snow-covered world beyond the cave, then back at the fire, then finally at them. For once, his silence didn't feel like distance. It felt like thought, like choice. And after a long moment, he gave a single slow nod. Not because he had to, but because he chose to. Inside the cave, the fire burned steady. Outside, the world remained cold, but between them, Something new had begun. Morning never truly arrived. The storm simply weakened enough to reveal a pale, bruised sky, like the world itself had survived something violent and was still recovering. Outside the cave, everything was reshaped. The mountain pass had vanished under deep drifts of snow. Rocks that once marked paths were now half-buried ghosts. Silence stretched across the land, heavy and unnatural, broken only by distant wind curling through the valley. Inside, the fire still burned, though smaller now. The night had been survived, but survival did not mean safety. The Apache warrior stood at the cave entrance for a long time, motionless, studying the terrain beyond. His eyes narrowed slightly as he read what others would have missed entirely. Tracks. Fresh, not from the storm. After a long pause, he crouched and traced them with his fingers. Multiple sets, moving carefully, not random travelers, not lost wanderers. May, now fully awake and sitting upright beside her sister, noticed the shift in him, immediately. "What is it?" she asked quietly. He didn't answer at first. He simply rose, scanning the horizon again, sharper now. Then, people. That one word changed everything. Lynn stirred beside May, sensing tension even before fully understanding it. The air inside the cave felt different now, no longer like shelter, but like a place being watched. May stood slowly, wrapping the furs tighter around herself. "Are they friendly?" she asked. The warrior gave no immediate reassurance. Instead, he stepped outside for a brief moment, disappearing into the snow, and returning seconds later with more certainty in his posture. "No," he said simply. That was all. Far down the ridge, shapes began to form. Not clearly at first, just movement against white. Then figures, 3, no, 5 men, moving with purpose. She couldn't. All she could do was watch the entrance, heart pounding, as the storm outside seemed to fight on two fronts now, the natural fury of the blizzard and the silent war of the man who moved through it like it belonged to him. Minutes passed, then finally, footsteps, slow, controlled. May stepped forward instinctively as the Apache warrior reappeared at the entrance, snow clinging to his shoulders and hair. His breathing was steady, his expression unchanged. Behind him, the valley was silent again, completely. Lynn let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Are they gone?" May asked. The warrior nodded once. "Gone," he said. No pride, no celebration, just fact. The danger had passed, but something had changed. May looked at him differently now, not just as a rescuer, not just as a stranger, but as someone who could stand between life and death and choose life without hesitation. And for the first time since the blizzard, the silence in the cave didn't feel like waiting for disaster. It felt like survival had finally won. The night did not pass. It dragged itself forward, slow and merciless, as if the world had been trapped in an endless moment of ice and wind. Outside the cave, the blizzard refused to weaken. It circled the mountain like a predator waiting for weakness, throwing itself again and again against stone and silence. Inside, the fire was now the only measure of time. Every crackle of wood, every rise of flame, every shift of shadow, marked another hour survived. The Apache warrior remained close, but no longer near the entrance. He had moved deeper into the cave, where he could still see the storm's glow, but also stay within reach of the women, if their condition changed. His presence was constant, but never intrusive, like a guardian carved from the same wilderness that was trying to kill them. The awake twin had stopped trembling as violently now. Warmth had begun to return to her body, but with it came awareness, full, uncomfortable awareness. She sat slightly propped against the furs, watching him when she thought he wasn't looking. He never seemed at rest. Even in stillness, he was prepared for movement. Her sister still slept, but her breathing had stabilized. That alone was enough to keep panic from returning. Minutes stretched, then hours. At some point, the silence between them changed. It was no longer purely survival silence. It became something heavier, awareness without escape. The twin finally broke it again, her voice quieter than before. "You never told us your name." The warrior glanced at her briefly, then returned his attention to the fire. A pause. "Names are not needed in storms," he said. That answer should have ended the conversation, but it didn't. Instead, something unexpected happened. The twin gave a faint, exhausted breath, that almost sounded like a laugh. Not mocking, just disbelieving, as if she was realizing how strange her situation truly was. "I think I understand what you mean," she said slowly. "Where I come from, people use names to feel safe." The warrior didn't respond, but he listened. That was new. Not the words, but the tone behind them. There was no demand, no entitlement, only honesty. A few more minutes passed before she spoke again, softer this time, almost hesitant. "I'm May." She paused, then looked at her sister. "That's Lynn." The warrior nodded once. Acknowledgement, nothing more. But it mattered. In his world, names were not spoken lightly. They were earned through survival, through presence, through time. A sudden gust of wind slammed into the cave entrance, louder than before. Snow dust spilled inside like smoke. The fire flickered violently, nearly dying. The warrior moved instantly. Without hesitation, he reached for more wood and fed the flames, shielding them with his body until the fire steadied again. May watched him closely. There was no hesitation in him, no panic, only response. It was that exact moment she realized something unsettling. He wasn't just surviving the storm. He was in control of it. Or at least, of everything inside it that mattered. Her gaze dropped to her hands still wrapped in thick furs. The warmth was returning fully now, but so was something else, awareness of how close she had come to death, and how close she still was, because survival wasn't guaranteed yet. The storm was still outside. And there were no signs of rescue, no signals of civilization, no certainty of anything beyond this cave. Then May did something she didn't expect herself to do. She shifted closer to her sister, instinctively protective, but also closer to the fire, and unintentionally closer to him. The warrior noticed immediately, but he said nothing. Instead, he did something different. He removed a thick hide from his pack and placed it between them and the cave entrance, reinforcing the barrier against the wind. It was not dramatic, not symbolic, just practical. Yet somehow it changed the atmosphere. The cave no longer felt like a place of exposure. It felt contained, safer. May looked at him again. "This would have been impossible without you," she said quietly. This time he answered. "Not impossible," he said, "just longer." A silence followed, one that felt less like distance and more like understanding slowly forming between two worlds that were never meant to meet. Outside, the storm continued its rage. Inside, something quieter had begun to grow. Not trust yet, but the first shape of it. The fire inside the cave had grown steadier now, but it could not fully erase the presence of the storm. Every gust outside still slammed against the mountain like a living force, reminding everyone inside that survival was temporary at best. The two sisters lay wrapped in thick furs, their bodies slowly returning to warmth. Color was beginning to return to their lips, but their eyes still carried the haze of near death, fragile, uncertain, not yet anchored to reality. The Apache warrior remained close to the entrance, half in shadow, half in firelight. He did not sit. He rarely did when others were vulnerable under his care. His posture stayed alert, listening to the storm, reading its rhythm as if it were another living thing plotting against them. Minutes passed in silence. Then the awake twin finally spoke again. Her voice was softer now, less panicked, but still edged with confusion. "You carried us all the way here." The warrior did not answer immediately. He simply adjusted a bundle of wood near the fire, letting the flames settle into a stronger burn. His silence was not rejection, it was restraint. Words were unnecessary in survival. Actions were truth. The twin studied him more carefully now, noticing the details she had missed before, the scars on his arms, the calm precision in every movement, the way he positioned himself so he could see both the entrance and the women at the same time. He was not just a rescuer, he was a protector trained by something far older than comfort or civilization. Her gaze shifted to her sister, still unconscious but breathing more steadily now. Relief flickered across her face, quickly replaced by exhaustion. The fear of death was fading, but a new kind of vulnerability was taking its place. They were alive, but exposed, not to the cold this time, to everything else. The cave felt small suddenly, too quiet. Outside, the storm still screamed, but inside every sound, the crack of firewood, The shift of fur, the breath between words, felt amplified. The awake twin pulled the furs closer around herself, instinctively protective. Her eyes flicked to the warrior again, studying him with growing uncertainty. There was something she needed to understand, something that didn't fit the logic of her situation. Why had he stayed? He could have left them. Most people would have. Even in a civilized world, strangers in danger were often ignored. Here, in this place of endless cold, survival ruled everything. And yet, he had carried them both through a storm that could kill a trained man in minutes. Her voice dropped lower, hesitant now. Why did you help us? This time, the question lingered longer in the air. The warrior finally turned slightly toward her. His expression remained calm, unreadable, but his eyes sharpened as if weighing the answer. He did not respond at first. Instead, he stepped toward the fire and knelt, placing another log into the flames. Sparks rose, briefly lighting the cave in flickers of gold and shadow. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and steady, measured, like every word had been chosen carefully. Because you were still breathing. That was all. No explanation of kindness, no story of fate, no emotional framing, just fact. The simplicity of it unsettled her more than any dramatic answer could have. She looked down again, her fingers tightening around the edge of the fur. The meaning behind his words was heavier than it seemed. He had not acted out of curiosity, or obligation, or desire. He had acted because in his world, a life still breathing meant responsibility, even if it cost him his own. A long silence followed. The fire crackled, the storm roared. The cave held its breath. Then quietly, the twin spoke again, but this time not to question him. To carry us both, you risked your life. The warrior did not deny it. He simply returned to watching the entrance, as if the conversation had already ended. But the truth lingered between them. Outside, the storm was still deciding whether to let them live. Inside, something else was beginning to form. Something fragile, unspoken, and far more complicated than survival alone. The cave was not large, but in a storm like this, it felt like a forgotten sanctuary carved out by the earth itself. Jagged stone walls blocked most of the wind, and the narrow entrance swallowed the blizzard's fury into a distant, muffled roar. Inside, the Apache warrior moved quickly and efficiently, as if he had done this 100 times before, because in truth he had. Survival was not a skill for him, it was instinct. He lowered both women carefully onto a bed of dry hides near the mac wall. Their bodies barely reacted to the shift. No resistance, no strength, only silence and shallow breaths that came and went like fragile echoes. Without wasting time, he gathered wood from a hidden stack deeper in the cave. It was old, dry, preserved for emergencies like this. Within moments, sparks caught. A small fire bloomed between them, weak at first, then steadying into a trembling orange glow. The light revealed them more clearly now. Identical faces, too similar to be mistaken even in dim firelight. Their skin was pale, almost translucent from the cold. Frost still clung to their lashes and hair. One of them shifted slightly, her fingers twitching as warmth slowly began to return. The other remained almost motionless, her breathing dangerously shallow. The warrior watched them closely, reading their condition the way others read the sky. This was worse than simple exposure. The cold had settled deep into their bodies. Fire alone would not be enough. He removed his outer layers and wrapped them in thick furs from his pack, layering them carefully, ensuring no gaps remained. His movements were precise, respectful, never careless, never invasive, only necessary. Minutes passed. Then, a sound, a weak inhale. One of the twins opened her eyes. They were dark, confused, unfocused. She blinked slowly, as if the world itself refused to form properly in her mind. Her gaze shifted from the ceiling of the cave to the fire, then to him. Her lips trembled. She spoke, but the words came out broken, shaped by exhaustion and unfamiliarity. Not English at first. Something softer, tonal, foreign. Then she tried again. Where are we? The warrior did not answer immediately. He simply watched her, ensuring she was truly conscious and not drifting back into unconsciousness. Her eyes widened slightly when she realized someone was there. Her gaze flicked to her side, and she froze. Another identical face lay beside her, her twin. The shock of recognition broke through the fog of cold and fear. She reached weakly toward her sister, touching her arm as if to confirm she was real. The other twin stirred faintly in response, but did not wake. A soft broken sound escaped the awake twin, half relief, half panic. The Apache warrior stepped closer to the fire, feeding it another piece of wood. The flames grew stronger, casting moving shadows across the cave walls. Only then did the twins truly take in their surroundings. They were not in a village, not in a city, not anywhere familiar. Just stone, fire, snow beyond the entrance, and a man watching them in silence. He was unlike anyone they had ever seen, bare-chested despite the freezing world outside. His body carried the marks of a life shaped by wilderness and battle. Tribal jewelry hung from his neck and arms, catching the firelight like fragments of ancient memory. His presence was calm, but not soft, controlled, watchful. The awake twin swallowed hard. Her voice came again, quieter now. "You saved us." The warrior gave a single slow nod. That was all. Silence returned, heavy but not hostile. The fire crackled between them, the only sound bridging two completely different worlds. Then the awake twin looked down at herself, at the furs, at her sister, at the storm still raging outside the cave mouth like a trapped beast. Reality began to settle in. They were alive, but barely, and still not safe. Her breath trembled as she realized something far more important than fear or confusion. Without him, they would already be dead. The storm did not arrive. It attacked. It came screaming over the mountains like a living thing, devouring the sky, swallowing the sun, and burying the earth beneath a ruthless ocean of white. The wind howled with a voice so fierce it seemed almost human, as if the land itself was crying out in warning, "Turn back, or be erased." But there was no one left to hear that warning. The mountain pass had long since been abandoned. Trails vanished beneath thick blankets of snow, landmarks twisted into ghostly shapes. Even the strongest travelers avoided this place in winter. Those who didn't rarely returned. Yet through this chaos, a lone figure moved. An Apache warrior. He walked without hesitation, his bare chest exposed to the freezing air, as if the storm held no power over him. Snow clung to his long black hair, tangled with beads and tribal ornaments that whispered softly with each step. His skin, hardened by years of survival, seemed almost carved from the same unforgiving land he crossed. But his eyes, sharp, alert, searching, betrayed something deeper. He was not wandering, he was tracking something. The warrior paused, crouching low as a violent gust of wind tore past him, nearly knocking him off balance. His gaze dropped to the ground, scanning what little remained visible beneath the snow. Tracks. Faint. Broken. Almost gone. Human. He touched the imprint lightly, his fingers brushing the edge before the wind erased it completely. Whoever had made these prints was weak, stumbling, desperate, and not far ahead. The warrior rose without a word and pressed forward, his pace quickening despite the storm's growing fury. The air burned with cold, each breath sharp and biting, but he moved as if guided by instinct alone. Then, a sound, so faint it could have been imagined. The warrior froze. The storm roared around him, drowning everything, but beneath it, just for a moment, he heard it again. A voice. No, two voices. Fragile, broken, alive. He turned sharply toward the sound, narrowing his eyes against the blinding snow. For a moment there was nothing but white emptiness. Then, through the shifting veil of the storm, he saw them. Two shapes, collapsed in the snow like discarded shadows. He ran. The distance was short, but the storm fought him every step of the way, clawing at his body, dragging at his legs. By the time he reached them, the wind had already begun to bury their forms. Two young women, identical. Their faces, pale and still, were nearly covered in frost. Their delicate clothing, fine silk, now torn and soaked, clung uselessly to their bodies, offering no protection against the brutal cold. Dark hair framed their frozen features, dusted with snow like fragile porcelain statues abandoned to the elements. One of them stirred weakly. Her lips parted, a faint whisper escaping into the storm. But no words formed. The other did not move at all. The warrior's expression tightened. They were dying, not later, not soon. He scanned the horizon quickly. The storm was getting worse. Visibility was fading fast. Within minutes this place would vanish completely, swallowed by the blizzard. If he left them, they would disappear, forgotten. If he stayed, he might join them. For a brief moment, the warrior stood completely still, the storm raging around him, as if waiting for his decision. Survival had always been simple. Move forward, stay alive, trust no weakness. That was the law of this land. But this was different. His gaze fell back to the twins. So fragile, so out of place in this brutal wilderness. And yet, still breathing. That was enough. Without another thought, he bent down and lifted one of them effortlessly, securing her against his shoulder. Then the second, carefully, deliberately, refusing to let either slip back into the snow. Their weight slowed him, but not enough to stop him. He turned into the storm once more. Every step now was a battle. The wind howled louder, as if angered by his defiance. Snow lashed against his skin like knives, and the ground beneath his feet threatened to give way with each movement. But he did not stop, because somewhere beyond this white chaos, there was shelter, a hidden place, a cave carved into the mountain, known only to him, a place where fire could live, where death could be held at bay, just long enough to fight back. The warrior pushed forward, his breath steady, his grip unyielding. Behind him the storm erased everything. Ahead of him, hope flickered fragile as a dying flame.